guys, today I'm going to teach you how to make a candy mask. This is an intermediate level tutorial. The materials you are going to need are scissors, fishing line, I'm using 30-pound test, Omniflex, I get it from Walmart, a measuring tape, elastic cord for your straps, and pony beads. The reason that I choose to use fishing line is because it holds the mask in place, it doesn't give it a lot of room to flex, and it's cheaper than using the elastic cord. The elastic cord ends up being more expensive, which is why I use it only for the straps along the face. Now we're going to need our measuring tape to measure the width of our mask. So I like to measure from the mid-cheek to the other side of the mid-cheek. But if you want to go further back and measure from the back of your ears, that's fine. On me, I end up measuring about 7.5 inches. And now we're going to have to measure from the bridge of your nose to about an inch or a half inch underneath your chin. And that's going to give you the length for the height of your mask and how tall it needs to be. For me, when I measure from the bridge of my nose underneath my chin, it's 6.5 inches. The reason that I choose to measure versus using the standard sizes that you normally would for any of the masks that you see online is everybody's face is different. So instead of using the normal bead counts, the average masks that you see are 22 rows in a skeleton or 33 beads in total. And that fits me perfectly, but it might not fit you. So measuring is the most effective way to make a mask that's going to fit you correctly. I know many people tend to panic when working with fishing line because they don't understand how to attach more string. I'm definitely going over that in this tutorial, so you'll learn how to do that, so don't worry about not cutting enough string when you first begin it. So now we're going to have to do the skeleton. I'm going to show you a diagram of how to find the skeleton on any pattern that you want to make a mask for. On this diagram, where the skeletons can possibly be are located by the green and the blue dots. You could start at the top or at the bottom, it's up to you. I personally like to start from the top and work my way down. The reason that I don't start my skeletons in the middle of the pattern is because you have to work on the top and the bottom of the panel, and I feel like it takes more effort and more work to do it that way. So I like to start one way and work my way down to the other side. We start the skeleton before it starts to taper off so we can get those ends. And we're making basically a peyote panel, a little small rectangle, and then we're eventually going to add points to those and connect those points together. It sounds a little bit more complicated than it is. It really is a simple procedure. It's just knowing how to be able to do the weaves. Now that you know how to locate your skeleton, we're going to add on the first 2 beads onto our pattern, like so, and let those slide down to the bottom. Now we're going to take our 2 ends and place them together and add 1 bead on, and then let that slide down to the bottom. And you should have 3 beads that look something similar to this. Now we're going to take our next 2 beads in the skeleton and add them on and let them slide down. So you should have 5 beads that look similar to this in alternating rows, and continue this all the way till you are done with your skeleton. Now we're going to tie off the last row of our skeleton. So you want to make sure that it's tight. You want to pull it together, straighten it out. It will be slightly wavy, don't worry, because when you add more rows on top of it, it's going to start straightening out and becoming more stiff. So don't worry if it is lopsided right now. So we're going to take a string in each hand, and we are going to loop underneath it like you would tying your shoe, except for we're going to do this 3 times. So one of your strings should be going through the loop 3 times. And the reason that we do this is because it's a surgeon's knot, and it's a knot specifically designed to not slip. It's a great knot to use for using fishing line. If you want to learn more about knots, I do have a video about that. Check that out on my Kandi Basics playlist. And after you've gotten that tied together, we're going to make another knot, and this time we're only going around twice. And you need to pull that tight. You might want to pull it together once you already have your knots, so it straightens out a little bit more. It is going to try to twist. Again, don't worry about it. Once you add more beads on, it'll be okay. And now you're going to decide where you want to string from this. I personally like to go up. You can go down, it doesn't matter. You're going to have 2 strings hanging off, but we're only going to work with one of the strings. The other string you can just put off to the side and not worry about it. So you're going to add your next bead on in your pattern, and you're stringing through the bead right next to it. So you go up the row. It should look similar to that. You add another bead, and you continue the peyote stitch process until you have finished your panel. So again, we're working from one skeleton to the other skeleton, like I showed you on the diagram, and that's going to be one whole panel. After you've finished your panel, then I'm going to show you how to complete the tips of your mask. If you happen to run out of string, what you need to do is take your small end, and we're going to tie it off. And how we do this is we slip it in between the bead right below it. So it's just in between that gap, so it's going to wrap around a string once you tie it. And you take the end and wrap it through the loop that is created by this. And I like to tie it 3 times to work on that surgeon's knot, and pull it as tight as I can all the way down. So the knot should be in between the 2 beads. You can see on my 2 yellow beads, there's a knot in between it now. And just make it as tight as possible. It's okay. If you need to use clamps or something else to pull it tight, that's completely fine. If you have enough string, you might want to tie the knot a couple more times. And if not, if you have a short string like mine, what I choose to do is to weave it back through 4 or 5 beads, and that way it's going to be a lot harder for that string to come undone, because it's going to be woven through the beads and it's going to have some tension. It doesn't matter how you weave them through the beads on this step, because again, all we're doing is hiding the string. It's not for decorative purposes or anything. We're just hiding the string. And then you cut off your excess. And now to attach more string, we're going to pull whatever you think is an appropriate length. And you take your scissors and cut that off. Then we're going to take one end of that string and go through the top of your panel and weave your beads through the whole first row of your peyote stitch panel to hide the string. That's the goal. Make sure that you don't have string hanging out or that it's bumpy. We're just weaving in and out of that row. We're not adding on any new beads. You're just weaving it through. And you're going to continue to do this until it comes out of the end, and then you're going to pull it so it's even on both sides. Now we're going to work on creating the diagonal pieces for your nose piece. Okay, I need to add on the last bead for my panel, which is going to be the yellow, which is my border piece, and this is going to help you see a lot of the diagonal and how it comes into play. So normally you're going to add on one bead and continue the pattern, so it's going to go straight. Well, obviously if we want it to go diagonal, we can't add on another bead. And you also need to be aware that there is a V shape in the middle. So it's not just a diagonal, but it's a V in the middle. So we're gonna omit some of the beads in the pattern. And I'll walk you through that when we get there. But right now we're focusing on creating that diagonal shape. So I'm stringing through the new yellow bead that I just strung on, instead of adding on a new bead. And that's what's gonna give you that diagonal shape. By omitting some of the beads, you'll start to get this gradual bead pattern. And now you can see that my string is coming through that yellow. And now I'm going to add on another yellow bead to continue this pattern. But now you can see that this row needs to continue to have color added to it, because it's not going to be able to get any height for the next diagonal. So this is where you would follow your pattern, and your pattern will tell you what colors to string on and where. If you don't know how to check out the numbers on like candypatterns.com, if you click on any pattern, it'll show up numbers, which will help you differentiate between the different rows. The most difficult part of a mask, I would say, is just making sure that you get the colors right and reading the patterns correctly. And again, we're going to add on our yellow bead so we can finish out that edge. And instead of adding on a new bead, what do? We string up through that yellow bead to create that diagonal again. And continue this all the way through until you get to where you need to omit a bead for that V shape. And I will walk you through that process once you get there. I have now reached the middle of my mask, so instead of adding on a new bead and continuing the row, I'm going to string down through that middle bead and then up through the next bead. And this is going to add just a little bit of a dip, and then we just continue beading the row like normal. Now we're back to the middle, and we're going to have to string through all of those 3 orange beads right there. And this is going to, again, give us that V shape. So, string down. And now take your string and string up through those 2 beads. And now we're going to continue finishing the row, and continue all the way around until you've completed your mask doing the same steps. Now that you have finished your points, make sure that your pieces line up together by pinching them together. Now you're going to take your string and weave the 2 pieces together. It doesn't necessarily matter how you do this. I'm just going to weave them back and forth between the beads directly across from it so it becomes symmetrical. And you're basically just like looping back and forth, and it's just going to bring those two pieces together and weave them together. There's no exact way that you should do this. It's completely fine, no matter how you want to do it. I just like to hide my string as much as possible, which is why I'm going between the 2 points and weaving them together. Now, after I've weaved them back and forth together, I like to hide my string. So I'm going to string down from the bottom all the way up and out a point again. Remember to pull tightly as you're doing this entire process so your mask will be pulled together, like so. And you can now finally see that shape for your mask coming to life. Now that your string is coming out, I like to string all the way down to where our panel was. So we're out of all of the diagonals and we're out onto the panel. I just find it easier to tie the knot there, and I think it looks much cleaner if you can tie your knot over on the sides versus on the nose piece. And now once you get your string to the side, we're going to tie off our mask. And remember to take your excess string and weave it in between the beads so it looks nice and you cut off the excess. We're going to do the same exact thing on the opposite side of the mask, so you get the same points and the same mask fitting shape by weaving the ends together as we did on the side. So if you need to go and rewatch the video or over this section of the video, go right ahead. It's the same exact thing. Now it's time for the final step in this process. You're going to need more pony beads and elastic string, and we're going to attach straps on the sides of our mask so we can wear it. Now you're going to need to measure again, and you're going to want to go from where your mask is touching around your ear to the other side of your mask, like that. Everybody's going to be different on their strap size, so it's always a good idea to measure. And now you're going to cut a piece of string either the same length or double the length, depending on your preference for when you string. It will be stronger if you use, if you take your string and double it up. I personally didn't use it for this tutorial purposes, but if you were going to make a string, a mask, and you wanted it to last for a long time, you would want to double up your string. I don't recommend that you use fishing line for this part. It can pinch you, it can be kind of uncomfortable, so I would highly recommend elastic for this. It can stretch, and let's say you're making it for somebody else and you're not entirely sure what their size is, elastic is always better because it can always stretch, and I believe it's a better choice. I've seen a lot of people who choose not to use pony beads for their mask, and they will use ribbon or shoestring or other kinds. It's all up to you, and it's your preference. So we're going to go into the second bead that we did on our peyote panel. So it's the second bead on a skeleton. And I string my string through there. And then I wrap it around the first bead. And this is basically making a little loop around those two beads. And the reason I do that is because I can tie a little knot there, and now it's connected in the two beads. If you were doubling up your string, you would just loop it and have the two ends coming out, but because I'm only using one string for this, I am just going to tie a small knot there, and I'm going to work with one string. And now we're just going to tie a regular square knot. So under once, over once. And I do this about 2 or 3 times. I like to tie my elastic several times so it has a good grip on it. And then I'm going to cut off the excess. You don't have to. It's all about preference here. And now you just add on your beads and do the exact same thing to tie it off on the other end. And congratulations, you successfully made your first candy mask. I hope that you found this video was helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. I put out new videos every Monday. If you want to check out my latest video, you can see it here, or you can check out a playlist of all the rest of my intermediate level tutorials.